On June 10, 2026, Ukrainian UAVs began reaching points deep behind the Russian front line. This was not just one target being hit. It was not just one vehicle burning on a road. And it was not just another battlefield video released to draw attention. The strikes appeared across several layers of Russia's military system. Some targets were tied to air defense. Others were linked to fuel and transport. Some were connected to command, support vehicles, and logistical points located far from direct combat. That created a more dangerous picture for Moscow. Ukraine did not appear to be destroying separate pieces of equipment only. It was putting pressure on the links that help Russia's army keep fighting every day. For Russian units at the front, the danger no longer came only from UAVs flying above them. It also came from behind, where fuel was delivered, orders were issued, vehicles were prepared, and support routes kept the assault moving. That pressure began where Russia had long trusted its first layer of protection: air defense. What happens when a system built to hunt UAVs becomes the target being tracked and attacked by UAVs first? Let's find out with military force. On June 10, 2026, Ukrainian UAV operators found a Russian Tor-M2 air defense system while it was on combat duty behind the front line. This was not a soft vehicle or an exposed truck. It was part of the shield Russia relies on to protect troops, supply areas, command sites, and moving columns from aerial threats. The first detail is timing. Ukrainian drones did not appear to strike the moment the target was seen. The Tor-M2 was watched as it moved toward a forested area, trying to reduce its exposure. That sequence matters because it shows a full targeting chain, not a lucky hit. The target was detected, tracked, confirmed, and then attacked when conditions became favorable for the Ukrainian operator. That patience made the strike more threatening because the drone team turned movement into intelligence before turning intelligence into firepower. A forest can protect a vehicle from some forms of observation, but it can also create problems for an air defense crew. Trees can block clear sightlines. Movement becomes tighter. Reaction time can shrink. A system that depends on radar awareness, missile launch angles, and fast crew decisions may lose part of its advantage when it is forced to hide in terrain that limits its own field of action. This is one of the central contradictions of the drone war in Ukraine. The Tor-M2 was designed to make Ukrainian UAV operations more dangerous. In this case, the battlefield environment turned that defensive system into a target. It had sensors, missiles, armor, and a trained crew. But those advantages were less decisive once Ukrainian reconnaissance had already fixed its position and followed its movement. The strike carried meaning beyond the loss of one vehicle. A Tor-M2 protects more than itself. It helps create a safer space around Russian staging points, roads, field headquarters, and support vehicles. If that layer is damaged, Russia may have to shift other air defense assets, change movement patterns, or accept higher risk in the same area. Even a local gap can matter when drones are already searching for openings. For Ukraine, the message was direct. The campaign was not only about hitting targets that had weak protection, it was also about hunting the systems meant to provide that protection. Once the close air defense layer is under pressure, the rear area behind it becomes more exposed. That shift changed the meaning of the attack from a single strike into a warning for every Russian crew. And that leads to the next stage of the story. Tor-M2 was only the near shield. Soon after, a larger and more valuable air defense system, with a wider protective role, also came into the sights of Ukrainian UAVs. After the strike on the Tor-M2, Ukrainian UAVs reportedly moved against another Russian air defense target with a wider battlefield role, the Buk M3. Published imagery showed the launcher being hit directly, making this one of the most important moments in the June 10th sequence. If the Tor-M2 represented the close shield around Russian units, the Buk M3 represented a broader layer of protection over the rear area. That difference matters. A Tor system is normally tied to nearby troops, roads, and tactical positions. A Buk M3 is built to cover a larger zone. It can help protect command facilities, supply corridors, ammunition storage areas, airfields, road hubs, and other sites that Russia needs to keep its forces connected. When such a system is hit, the effect reaches beyond the launcher itself. It can weaken the confidence of every unit operating under that layer of protection. Ukraine has estimated the value of a Buk M3 system at around $45 million. That figure is important because it shows the cost of replacing advanced air defense during a long war. Yet the financial loss is only one part of the story. A truck or light vehicle can be replaced more easily than a modern air defense launcher with trained operators, radar links, missile supply, maintenance support, and a place inside a wider defensive network. The real military damage comes from the gap the strike may create. Air defense systems are not isolated pieces of metal. They form a chain. One system watches, another covers, another reacts, and other assets help protect nearby sites. If one part of that chain is damaged, Russian commanders must decide how to close the gap. They can move another system forward, but that exposes a different area. They can spread the remaining systems wider, but that reduces density. They can keep the same layout, but then the damaged zone becomes more vulnerable. This is why the hit on the Buk M3 mattered more than its price tag. It suggested that Ukrainian drones were not simply searching for visible targets. They were looking for nodes inside Russia's protective system. A launcher is not only a weapon, it is also a signal of where Russia believes protection is needed. If Ukraine can locate and strike that signal, it can also understand what valuable assets may be sitting behind it. Ukraine does not need to dominate the sky in the traditional sense. It does not need fighter jets flying freely above the battlefield. It only needs temporary openings, brief moments when drones can pass through, confirm a target, and deliver a strike before Russia can restore coverage. In a war shaped by cheap UAVs, constant observation, and fast decision-making, even a short opening can become dangerous. The combined pressure on Tor M2 and Buk M3 creates a new problem for Russian crews. Air defense operators must watch the sky, but now they must also worry about being watched themselves. Every radar emission, movement route, hidden position, and resupply stop can become part of Ukraine's target picture. This changes the psychology of the battlefield. The hunter has to act like prey. For Moscow, that is the deeper warning. A $45 million system is painful to lose, but the larger concern is the possible erosion of layered protection behind the front. When close and medium-range systems both come under pressure, the rear battlefield becomes less predictable. Routes that seemed covered may need new escorts. Command locations may demand more protection. Storage areas may be forced to disperse. Once that pressure reaches the air defense layer, the next target set becomes easier to understand. Ukraine can then move from the weapons guarding the rear to the resources that keep Russian forces moving every day: fuel, transport, and the supply chain behind the guns. After Russian air defense systems came under pressure, the Ukrainian strike sequence moved toward logistics. Several Russian fuel tankers at a railway station were hit by UAVs, according to the reported footage. This was a different kind of target. It did not carry the same price tag as a Buk M3, and it did not look as dramatic as an air defense launcher exploding. Yet fuel is one of the quiet forces that decides whether an army can move, fire, recover, and attack again. For Russian forces, a railway station is more than a transport stop. It can serve as a transfer point where fuel, ammunition, spare parts, and other supplies are gathered before moving closer to the front. If tankers are struck there, the effect can spread beyond the flames on the tracks. It can slow the loading schedule, force rerouting, and leave units waiting for supplies that were expected to arrive on time. Fuel controls the speed of war. Tanks need it to advance. Self-propelled artillery needs it to change position after firing. Armored vehicles need it to carry infantry through dangerous ground. Trucks need it to move shells, food, water, generators, and repair parts. Recovery vehicles need it to pull damaged equipment away before Ukrainian drones return for a second strike. This is why fuel tankers are important targets. They are not only containers of liquid, they are part of the movement system behind every assault. A unit may still have soldiers, vehicles, and weapons, but if fuel arrives late, that unit may lose the timing it needs. In modern war, timing can be as important as firepower. A delay of hours can change the shape of a local battle. Such delays can weaken even a well-supplied assault plan. Ukraine does not need to destroy every Russian tanker to create pressure. The more realistic goal is disruption. If several vehicles burn at a railway station, Russian commanders may have to change routes, split convoys into smaller groups, increase guards, move at night, or wait for safer windows. Each choice creates cost. More escorts mean fewer vehicles for other missions. Smaller convoys mean more trips. Night movement may reduce visibility, but it can also slow loading, repair, and coordination. The strike also sends a signal to drivers and logistics officers. A route that worked yesterday may become unsafe today. A station that looked protected may suddenly require new air defense, camouflage, and movement discipline. This constant uncertainty forces the rear area to behave like a combat zone, even when the nearest trench is many miles away and no infantry fight is visible. The impact of a fuel strike is often measured later, not at the moment of explosion. A burned tanker may mean one battery of artillery moves later than planned. It may mean a repair team waits for transport. It may mean an assault group receives fewer armored vehicles at the point of attack. None of these effects is as visible as a missile system being hit, but together they can reduce pressure on Ukrainian positions. This is the logic of attacking logistics. Ukraine is not trying to win the entire war with one strike on a railway station. It is trying to make Russian operations slower, more expensive, and less predictable. Once fuel and transport are under pressure, the next layer becomes clear. An army can still move with enough fuel, but it cannot fight in an organized way without orders, communications, and command posts behind the front. A strike on a command post of Russia's 88th Motorized Rifle Brigade in the Luhansk sector moved the June 10th drone campaign into a sensitive part of the battlefield. According to Ukraine, repeated UAV attacks forced Russian personnel to leave the area. That detail matters because a command post is not just a building with soldiers inside. It is where reports, movement, fire support, security, and orders become organized military action. On the modern battlefield, command is a form of protection. A unit under pressure needs more than fuel, ammunition, and vehicles. It needs someone to read the situation, decide which route is safe, send reserves to the right point, direct artillery, and warn nearby troops when drones are active. Without that center, separate units can fight, but they may lose the shared picture that keeps an assault moving in the right direction. The strike in Luhansk carried meaning beyond the blast. When officers, radio teams, drone coordinators, and support staff are forced to move, the local system can lose rhythm. Maps may be packed or abandoned. Antennas may be damaged. Vehicles have to relocate. New positions must be found. Communications must be restored before decisions can move smoothly again. This disruption is serious in a drone war. UAVs shorten the time between detection and attack. A convoy spotted on a road may have only minutes before it is targeted. A small infantry group crossing open ground may need artillery cover immediately. A damaged vehicle may require fast recovery before another drone arrives. In that environment, delayed orders are not an office problem. They can decide whether a unit survives, retreats, or enters an area watched by Ukrainian drones. A command post connects different parts of the Russian force. It helps link infantry with artillery, logistics with road security, and reconnaissance with response teams. If that link is hit, each part may still exist, but it may not act together at the right speed. The result can be confusion when Russian units need fast choices, clear routes, and fire support. This is why Ukraine's strike fits the pattern of the operation. Earlier targets placed pressure on the protective and logistical layers around Russian forces. The command post strike went after the layer that turns those resources into battlefield decisions. It did not need to destroy an entire brigade to matter. It only needed to disturb how that brigade understands the fight and reacts. For Russia, the problem is not simply replacing a damaged room or moving a few vehicles. A new command site must be hidden, connected, guarded, and supplied. It must also operate without drawing attention from Ukrainian reconnaissance. Every relocation can create new signals, road movement, and chances for detection. Each new command position becomes both a solution and another target once Ukrainian drones begin searching the wider road network from above. The Luhansk strike showed that Ukraine was not only targeting metal, fuel, or radar, it was targeting the nervous system that allows Russian units to act as one force. If command is forced to move, the next question is what happens to the vehicles and port assets that are supposed to turn those orders into movement on land and along the coast. In Donetsk, Ukrainian drone operators from Magyar's Birds reportedly focused on a Russian military vehicle storage area. This was not a moving convoy already close to Ukrainian positions. It was a place where equipment appeared to be gathered before its next mission. Video from the strike showed several vehicles being hit by UAVs, which suggests that Ukraine was trying to damage the support system before it could move toward the front. A storage area may look simple from above, but it can carry real military value. Trucks can move ammunition, food, fuel cans, tools, generators, and spare parts. Armored vehicles can bring infantry through dangerous ground. Repair vehicles can return damaged equipment to service. Engineering machines can clear routes, build positions, or support movement through broken terrain. When many assets sit in one area, they help commanders prepare operations, but they also create a target. The Donetsk strike mattered because Ukraine did not need to wait for Russian vehicles to appear during an assault. If drones could find the gathering point early, they could strike before drivers started engines, before crews received final instructions, and before vehicles entered roads closer to Ukrainian lines. A vehicle destroyed in storage cannot reinforce a trench, carry shells, evacuate wounded troops, or support a new push. That delay can change what reaches the battlefield at the crucial moment. That can affect the next assault before it even begins. Even damaged vehicles can create problems. They may block exits, slow movement inside the site, force crews to change loading plans, and require recovery work under pressure. Russian forces may try to hide equipment under trees, beside buildings, or inside industrial zones, but drone reconnaissance makes storage harder to protect. Parked vehicles leave patterns. Tracks on the ground, repeated movement, heat signatures, and nearby support activity can reveal where equipment is being prepared. After the vehicle storage area, another support asset entered the story. A Russian tugboat docked at a port in Russian-controlled territory also became a target for Ukrainian UAVs. A tugboat is not a major warship, but it helps keep a port working. It can assist vessels as they enter, leave, turn, or dock. It can support repair activity, cargo handling, and coastal logistics. If such assets are hit, the port may still function, but its rhythm can slow. Taken together, the strikes in Donetsk and at the port show a wider pattern. Ukraine is not only looking at weapons already firing on the front. It is looking at vehicles, service craft, and support assets that help Russia prepare the next move. That expands the danger zone from roads and rail stations to parking areas, repair points, port facilities, and coastal routes. Yet the final effect still returns to the front. Behind every destroyed support vehicle or damaged port asset is a Russian soldier who may receive help later, move slower, or enter combat with fewer resources above him. At the front line, the same UAV network that struck Russian rear targets also continued to hunt infantry in the open. Russian soldiers moving near Ukrainian positions were reportedly detected and attacked while crossing exposed ground, searching for cover, or trying to approach firing points. This showed the final link in the June 10th chain. The targets were no longer launchers, fuel tankers, command rooms, storage areas, or port assets. They were small groups of men moving under a sky watched almost constantly. For infantry, movement has become one of the most dangerous actions on the battlefield. A soldier may believe trees, trench walls, broken houses, or village ruins can hide him from view. But a drone can read the ground differently. Footprints, fresh tracks, sudden stops, crawling movement, and disturbed grass can all reveal a position. Once that position is marked, the time to react can be very short. This is where the earlier strikes connect to the front. If air defense is under pressure, Ukrainian drones may gain more room to observe and attack. If fuel deliveries slow, Russian infantry may receive fewer vehicles or less timely support. If command posts are disrupted, warnings and rescue decisions can arrive late. If support vehicles are damaged before they move, replacement forces may not reach the fight when needed. The result is a battlefield where Russian infantry can be shaped by events far behind them. A tanker burning at a rail site, a command post forced to relocate, or a vehicle storage area under attack may influence what happens to soldiers in a trench or tree line hours later. The frontline fighter may not see those rear strikes, but he can feel their effect when support becomes slower, thinner, or less coordinated. Ukraine's approach shows how low-altitude drone warfare links the rear area with the contact line. Expensive systems and small infantry teams can enter the same target picture. The value of the target changes, but the method remains similar. Observe, confirm, track, and strike. By the end of the June 10th sequence, the issue was no longer only what Russia lost that day. More parts of Russia's military system were being pulled into the same zone of pressure, from rear support to the men moving near Ukrainian positions under constant drone surveillance now, where every delay can turn movement into exposure very quickly. The June 10th drone sequence showed a wider shift in Ukraine's campaign. The targets were different, but they were connected by one purpose: to make Russia's rear system less stable. Air defense was pressured, fuel movement was disrupted, command activity was hit, support vehicles were damaged, and infantry near the front remained under constant observation. This does not mean Russia's military structure will collapse from one day of strikes. Moscow still has reserves, repair teams, electronic warfare, camouflage, and the ability to move assets elsewhere. But every adjustment creates a cost. More dispersion means slower coordination. More escorts mean fewer resources for other tasks. Longer routes mean weaker timing at the front. The deeper effect is gradual pressure. Ukraine is trying to turn the rear area into a contested zone, where movement, command, and supply can no longer be treated as safe parts of war, even far from direct combat. War is not only measured by destroyed vehicles or burned equipment. It also shows us how fragile security becomes when command, supply, and human lives are pulled into the same battlefield. If you want more clear and careful analysis about modern warfare, geopolitics, and the cost of conflict, subscribe to Military Force and keep learning with us.